Turn your Bibles to Mark chapter 7. Mark chapter 7, starting at verse 24. And from there he rose and went to the region of Tyre and Sidon. And he entered the house and did not want anyone to know, yet he could not be hidden. But immediately a woman whose little daughter had an unclean spirit heard of him and came and fell down at his feet. Now the woman was a Gentile, a Seraphician by birth. She begged him to cast out the demon out of her daughter. And he said, "Let the children be fed first, for it is not right to take children's bread and throw it to the dogs." But she answered him, "Yes, Lord, but even the dogs underneath the table eat the children's crumbs." And he said to her, "For this statement you may go your way. The demon has left your daughter." And she went home and found the child lying in bed and the demon gone. I want to talk today about persistent faith. Persistent faith. In about February, March 2020, COVID hits. A lot of things shut down because COVID is serious. My boys' mother used that as an opportunity to withhold my children from me. I'm no different than many other parents. During this process, I contacted my lawyer. He had instructed me. He had told me it would take about at least a month or two when the courts opened back up before you can ever go to court. So in April, I filed the paperwork. She got the papers served. So she knew she was going to have to answer for her actions. So she decided to make numerous false accusations about me and my children so she could keep my children from me. All of this, I didn't see my boys for 6 months. This is the first time I ever had anything quite like this. So I didn't know what was happening. I couldn't go to jail. I couldn't lose my boys. I didn't know. What I did know is this, that only God could take care of my problem. Only God could take care of my problem. So I knew I had to be persistent with God. Things that are serious, we have to be persistent in. Our text is about a woman who is persistent in her faith. She is a wealthy woman, a woman who's wealthy. She's a single mother, but Jesus is the only answer to her problem. We see three things about her persistent faith, about what we are to have during persistent faith. First, we need persistent faith for serious requests. We need persistent faith when we're waiting on God, and we need persistent faith to wait until we get the answer first. We need persistent faith for a serious request. Look with me in verses 24 to 26. And from there he rose and went away to the region of Tyre and Sidon, and he entered the house and did not want anyone to know, yet he could not be hidden. But immediately a woman whose little daughter had an unclean spirit heard of him, came and fell down at his feet, Now, the woman was a Gentile, a Seraphician by birth, and she begged him to cast the demon out of her daughter. Can we agree on something? Can we agree that not all requests that we bring to God in prayer are of the same value or the same importance or the same significance? Can we agree on it? Can we agree that something we put before God are far more important, far more significant, and far more valuable to us? It's these things, it's the more serious things that we need to be persistent in. That we need to be persistent in. If I need a job and I ain't had a job for 6 months, I need to be more persistent than if I already have a job. And then can I agree I need to be more persistent on the former rather than the latter? If I'm a family member who's in the hospital and the doctor said they got 6 months, I'm going to be more persistent praying for that family member than if I'm a family member who goes to the hospital with a broken leg. If my spouse gives me my divorce papers and then I got my court date in the month, I'm going to be more persistent in my prayer for this situation than if me and my spouse had an argument. Can we agree that certain things we put before God are far more serious to us than others? This woman has a serious request. And it's dependent on the survival of her daughter. Her request is serious and it's urgent. Now, this is a widow, and how do we know she's a widow? Because her husband is not even in the picture. And during that time, a woman just didn't approach a man. Because if that were the case, that would be a different kind of woman. No. Two, she's wealthy. She's not only a widow, so this is a single mother, but this is a single mother that's wealthy, but how do I know that she's wealthy? Well, the text says it's a Gentile, a Seraphician by birth. This woman was wealthy, a Seraphician. What that means is that she hails from an era of Phoenicia, controlled by Syria, and that's to contrast her from Northern Africa. So Northern Africa would have been a more poor type of area, and Phoenicia is a more affluent. She begs Jesus for help. You can actually see in the text. You can actually see she's begging him to cast out the dog. You can imagine that she's on her knees. This is her daughter, and she needs Jesus to take care of it. Serious matters require persistent faith. It's easy for someone to tell, just give it to the Lord. Just give it to the Lord. Just drop it off to the Lord and just leave it alone. But that's not what this woman does. And I have to wonder, for those who would rather tell someone, just give it to Jesus, leave it alone. Have they ever really had a serious thing that they needed Jesus to take care of? We all can realize that this woman is in a desperate spot. She's in a desperate situation. She needs Jesus to take care of this situation that honestly no one else can. She comes to Jesus because she's heard all the stories, she's heard it all, and now she needs her daughter to be healed. Not only is she wealthy, not only is she a widow, but serious matters are also personal. The more personal the request, the more persistent I must be for that request. Now, I said this is a widow, this is a single mother. If her daughter died, her line, her wealth also died as well. But that's not the real personal issue. This is her daughter. This is her only child. And there's nothing quite like the pain of your child suffering that you can do nothing about. Nothing quite hurts like the pain of your child. Nothing will cause a parent more stress, more anxiety, more difficulty than seeing your child in pain and you can do nothing about it. Now we don't know what was really going on, but we can put two and two together in the story. This demon, this unclean demon, could have given her daughter seizures, caused her daughter to go into the, or this demon could have threw her down in the door. There would have been bruises and scars on her daughter. She might have had chains on her daughter so she wouldn't hurt herself. We all know what a parent with a suffering child, we all know what that's like. Those of us who are parents know what it's like when your child is bullied. That's pain because you can do nothing about it. Child addicted to drugs, addicted to vaping, marijuana, cocaine, whatever it is, they're addicted to drugs, they're addicted to alcohol, and there's pain there that you can do nothing about. If you have a daughter and she's in an abusive relationship, that's pain because you can do nothing about it. These are the things that we come before God. These are the things that we need God to take care of because we cannot take care of them. This is what we must be persistent in. This is what God is calling us to be persistent because we know only God can take care of it. Only God. My question to you. What do you need to keep on being persistent in that you're about to give up on? Don't give up on what God has for you. Don't give up on what God, what you need to keep on giving to God. Persistent faith is required for serious issues, but also for waiting. Look with me in verse 27. And he said, being Jesus, let the children be fed first, for it's not right to take the children's bread and throw it to dogs. We look at this story, we look at this statement, and it seems kind of harsh, doesn't it? Seems kind of harsh for Jesus to say this. But there isn't anything untrue about his statement. Jesus was sent to the lost sheep of Israel. In a parallel passage, it said, Matthew chapter 15, verse 24, it says, and he answered, I was sent only to the lost sheep of Israel. Paul, the apostle to the Gentiles, in Romans 1:16 said, for I am not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of God for all who believe, first for the Jew, then for the Greek. And Jesus, when he sends out his apostles to go cast out demons in the towns, he says this in Matthew chapter 10, verse 5, go nowhere among the Gentiles and enter no town of the Samaritans, but go rather to the lost sheep of Israel. Jesus was sent. When he came to the lost sheep of Israel primarily. But Jesus sees this woman. This is Jesus. Jesus is God. Jesus knows that this is a wealthy woman. And what he throws out there to pull out her faith of what she's going to say. Because he knew that only the wealthy had dogs to pets. He knew that. Jesus tells her, he doesn't tell her no. He says, you're going to have to wait. Israel must be first than the Gentiles. This is a picture of a dinner. If I would contextualize it, if I would contemporize it, imagine you're in one of your big family dinners, there's about 30, 40 around, and the table's all set out. It's got yams, it's got turkey, it's got pies, it's got pumpkin, it's got sweet potato pie, it's got chocolate pie, it's got pumpkin. The dinner is laid out. Who gets fed first? The elderly and the children, right? Now, say you brought in a stranger and imagine that they worked themselves in the very front of the line. How would everybody react? Yeah, everybody would be offended. They have to eat at the back, and that's the scene here. The Jews had promises because that's where the promise was given to them first. Nothing will grow your faith quite like waiting on God to do exactly what He promised. Now, Jesus doesn't tell her no, but He says, you're going to have to wait. It's essentially, He says, woman, you're going to have to wait your turn. Waiting may be the most difficult thing you ever do. Waiting not only forces you to grow your faith, but at the same time, it starves the flesh. It starves the flesh and causes one to trust in God and what He said. You know, it does, and it really, it forces one. Waiting, unlike anything else, being patient, grows your faith more than anything else. I've shared with some of you about the prayer God has told me about my ex-girlfriend, Alyssa. Nothing has been more difficult, nothing has been more trying, nothing has been than that prayer. But at the same time, nothing has grown my faith more. I knew when I got that prayer, I was very restricted on who I told. Because I know what people would say. I even had many well-meaning Christians would say, surely God told you to pray for her every day, every night. That's kind of obsessive. Yeah, I would agree with that. But that's what He told me. I had many things that people tell me. Surely, just give it to God, leave it alone. Surely God doesn't want you to pray for it every day. I knew this was going to happen, but nothing has grown my faith like this prayer. Nothing. In all my 25 years as a Christian, nothing quite has grown me faith-wise quite like this. Persistence requires us that when we need to wait, that we continue with what God has continue putting our requests until God does exactly what He says. You continue to lift it up in prayer. You don't give up. Wait does not mean I stop praying for it. Wait means I continue to bring it up to Him, and He's going to grow my faith. That is what persistence is. You bring that petition before God until one, He answers it, and two, that He brings it into reality. Wait does not mean stop, it means continue. That's God told you to wait that you're about to give up on? Are you single and God has promised you marriage, but you're about to give it up because you just don't see it happening? Continue to put it before God. Is it that job that God has promised that things aren't quite lined up yet and you're just about ready to throw in your white flag? You're about to give up on it. I plead you, continue to bring that job before the Lord. Is it the conflict with your spouse that you've been praying for some reconciliation? That reconciliation isn't happening. You continue to bring it until that reconciliation and that restoration happens. You continue. You don't give up. Waiting does not mean I give up. I throw in the towel and says, I'm going to keep bringing this to the Lord until God does what He said He's going to do. Till God says what He said He was going to do. Persistent faith is required not only for serious requests, but also until we get the answer. Look with me in verses 28 and 30. But she answered him, yes, Lord, but even the dogs underneath the table eat the children's crumbs. And he said to her, for this statement you may go away, the demon has left your daughter. She went home and found the child lying in bed and the demon gone. This woman did not view waiting as stopping. No, that's not what she did. She continues to be persistent with this request. She does not give up. Faith, by its very nature, is persistent. It doesn't give up until God accomplishes exactly what He said He's going to do. And then the big thing that we learn here is that Jesus don't mind you bugging Him. Jesus ain't going to tell you, you're irritating me. Jesus ain't going to tell you to leave me alone. Jesus welcomes when we are persistent. Jesus welcomes us to come persistently to Him with our requests. Waiting does not mean stop. We see two things about our waiting process. First, she's submissive. Being submission to God in the waiting process until He does what He said He's going to do, maybe the hardest thing that you ever do. Our world tells us now, our flesh tells us now, Jesus says, wait on my perfect timing. I was having a conversation with some men that I disciple on Thursday, and we were talking. The hardest thing to do is to wait on God. Let me repeat that. The hardest thing to do is to wait on God. But it's the most important thing for God to shape us and mold us to be the people that He's calling us to be. Waiting is necessary. Waiting is necessary. So my question, what do you need to be submissive that God has told you to wait? Is it the marriage or relationship that you just don't see possible? Wait on His timing. Is it that job that you're waiting for that doesn't seem to be there? Wait on His timing. Is it that ministry opportunity that seems so elusive to you? Wait on His timing. What is it that God is telling you to be submissive to Him and wait, and don't try to force your way into things? That's a problem, is that we try to, during our waiting process, we try to force it with Him. When we try to force our way through things and we make it worse. Don't force your way. Allow God to take care of it. Because when God brings it, when God drops it into your lap, it will be the perfect time and all the chips will be in order. All the chips will be in order. You know, I have a friend Chris. Chris is a wonderful man, but Chris makes some little mistakes. He makes some little mistakes. So right before COVID, he made a marriage mistake. But him and his wife stayed together not so much, I think, out of love, but because financially that they couldn't leave. Chris has been praying for his wife for reconciliation for well over a year. It's 2023. COVID happened in 2020. And just last weekend, they were watching a sermon, and she told Chris, God told me to put my ring back on. I can imagine what Chris was going through at that time. But Chris didn't give up. Chris is the model of persistence that we all are to have. Even amongst our mistakes, even amongst things that we don't always do right, we continue to bring that before the Lord. That is what we must be. That is what submissive means. Not forcing our way through, but allowing God to take care of it. This woman is not only submissive, she's optimistic. She says, just give me the crumbs, Lord. She repeats what Jesus said, but she says, even dogs don't have to wait for the crumbs from the children, because she said, Lord, just give me the crumbs. This is an act of faith. This is an act of overwhelming faith, because she understands that even the crumbs, if I get the crumbs, it can take care of any problem I have. If Jesus can take 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish and feed over 5,000 men, then surely whatever crumbs Jesus has can take care of any problem I have. God can take a little and multiply it exponentially. When my finances are short, He sure can multiply it. If my resources are short, He sure can multiply it. If my opportunities are little and short, He can multiply it. We know that God can multiply even the crumbs. If faith like a mustard seed, which is the smallest seed, and yet it grows to be the biggest tree, then surely my little faith and what God can do with my faith is overwhelmingly what I even ask of Him. Her persistence gets her child healed. Now, the demon leaves her child and never returns. It never comes back, ever comes back. The child, when God takes care of your problem, it's taken care of completely. In August, I had my court cases. I had like 3 or 4. I didn't know what was going to happen. Court case, not guilty. Court case, not guilty. Time after time after false accusations were not guilty, and they were not brought up again. When God takes care of your problem, it's done. It's done completely. That is what God does. This woman's daughter was healed, and the demons never came back. This is what persistent faith does. When we are persistent and God finally answers us, He takes care of it completely. This is what we have to do with our faith. To be persistent. Don't quit. When God says, wait, that doesn't mean I stop praying for it. It means I continue bringing it before the Lord, because it's drawing out faith. My faith is going to grow in this process. As we go out, I want you to know that the answer of wait doesn't mean I stop. Doesn't mean I give up on God. And I know the waiting is hard. But continue with what God, banking on what God has promised you. Never giving up. I'll leave you with the Lord's benediction. Numbers chapter 6, 24 to 26. The Lord bless you, keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. And in Espanol, Jehová te bendiga y te guarde. Jehová haga resplandecer su rostro sobre ti y tenga de ti misericordia. Jehová alce sobre ti su rostro y ponga en ti paz. And you go with the Lord's benediction and the Lord's blessing as you wait for God to take care of what he said